Hello again from Normandy, it's sunny. I'm here with Crispy. Crispy was hatched last year. She's a chamois Polish and she's not in this film because this film was made, well, I started to make it in apple blossom time last year and we're almost at apple blossom time again. Not quite, we're in camellia time at the moment. It's the first 3 suggestions of how to make your forest garden. And these first 3 took quite a lot of filming and quite a lot of time, so that's why the film is very long. It's 31 minutes, I think. So make your popcorn, like me and Crispy have, settle back, and hope you enjoy it. Some days, let's break it up a bit. Oh, Crispy was up in it. That's it, it's nice. Homemade popcorn, Crispy. Is it good? And if you wanted even another reason to have chickens in your forest garden, apart from their beauty, brains, character and friendship, then it's the fact that on a beautiful hot day like today you can make some very easy and very quick chocolate and banana ice cream. I wish you were here to share it. Oh, do I? Wild poppies, apart from being beautiful, are a great indicator of soil type, in particular if you've bought an abandoned garden. This is because once the seed falls, it will lay dormant if the garden has been abandoned and grass has grown over the top. But once you start to dig in that garden, those poppies will germinate. So you'll be able to see from where the poppies are in a piece you've dug, where the garden has been cultivated before. Similarly, within a field, as you can see here, the poppies will grow only where the soil is light and dry. If you look through the whole field, you can see the areas where the soil changes. In this field, the soil becomes richer and moister and less poppies grow there. With nettles, it's the opposite, where you get a lot of nettles growing. As for here in my flower border, it's where the soil is damper and richer. So just from these plants you can read your soil. This is a meadow which my father actually grew to show what an alkaline meadow would look like. Oh no, Dexter, watch that chicken. My sister's land here in Scotland is an example of slightly acidic soil. You can see that from the reeds and also from this beautiful little flower known here as the Scots bluebell. A lot of people do these soil experiments and they take soil from different parts of the garden and then mix it all up. But I don't really see the point in that, because if you've got different soils in different areas, then that means you can plant different things in different areas. So I'm just doing this test down the bottom of the garden here. We're a bit near the road. It's also rush hour, the nearest to rush hour we ever get when people are coming back for their evening meal. So hopefully it's going to be okay. The first one to do is one that you can do with just the mud pies. Sounds really good. And you just add a little bit of water to your soil. This is the bottom greenhouse. We'll talk about greenhouses later. This is the first greenhouse we ever made. It only cost $5, €5, £5. And it's made out of recuperated materials. So what you do is you just basically feel your soil, and you can tell whether by how sticky it is and how well it actually holds together, as to how much clay's in it, how much salt's in it and how much sand's in it. You're supposed to be able to do this sort of ribbon test where you sort of pull it out and, well, this one isn't holding together. Now I know this garden is mostly clay shale, but down here obviously in this greenhouse we've worked this soil for years, so adding humus to it, adding different things, so it's not got a great deal of ribbon ability. I would say that was more of a sort of loam, a mixture, rather than anything else. I can feel clay in it, but it's not a huge amount. You need a straight-sided glass jar, and then you just get some of your soil, and I think I'm just going to put half in. And what you're going to do is you're just going to then fill it up with water. And then I think I'm going to mix it like that, because that'll mean, yeah, it's fun. Then you give it a good shake. Oh, that's better, yeah. So the idea of this is you shake it up, and then within the first minute, the heaviest part of the soil, which is the sand, begins to form at the base here. And you can see as well, within half an hour, the silt is beginning to form, and the clay, the lightest particles, are still in suspension here. You have to wait for 12 to 24 hours for the clay to actually form as a layer. And then you measure the total height, and you then can work out the percentage of each of these different soil types. Using a chart that you can find on the internet, you can then plot the points of 2 of them and work out what soil type you have. So it's really simple, easy to do, and fun. What we're looking at here from the shore is a start of a garden, and somebody here who really has consulted the genius, because you've got the wild rocky outcrop at the start of the garden. You can just see the garden gate, which is about halfway down the cliff, and you can see some of the features of the garden. You can just see the rose walk above at the top of the cliff, and there's a great lookout halfway up, which you can see here, and that's a great reminder of what this area is all about, and it's about pirates and smugglers. And then as you go through into the garden, you've got a sort of transition period, which you'll see soon when we go to where the house is, because you've got this amazing Mediterranean style villa. So you've got a very formal garden, and you've got a very wild garden, and in between the two you've got a forest garden, which is made up of layers of greenery and hedges, and a sort of a wilderness as well. And perhaps it's a bit of a giveaway as to who owns it if I say that the hedges look a bit like folds of material, because you can see, and it's another lovely thing I like about this garden, you can see the ex-owner of the garden flitting through the trees in these enormous translucent images, and it's in fact Christian Dior. But if you enter from the coast, you'd think it was a completely different garden. And that's the genius of this garden, is that it segues from the wild and the forest into the very formal. And even there, he's still kept the wild within the formal, because the worst thing you could possibly do to this garden is shut out that magnificent view of the coast. And he's got a sort of, might call it a perspex ha-ha. So he's got the view right out to sea there, which is the backdrop to quite formal rose garden. And of course, being Christian Dior, and it's very sad because you can't share that with me, you've got these wonderful perfumes of the flowers which inspired his own perfumes. So you've got the heliotrope and the roses and the jasmines, which absolutely hit you as you enter this part of the garden. With our own garden, we had 10 years to consult the genius before we finally came to live here permanently in 2000 and start to create the forest garden.
I can see you.
And I think the garden suits the house and it suits the area. So hopefully the genius and I have an accord. I spent many school holidays gardening with my grandfather, who was a professional gardener, and many college holidays working as a gardener in a stately home. Even so, I've still got a lot to learn, and I find that books are really valuable. Particularly, I like reference books such as the encyclopedias of gardening. They give you a good foundation for looking at all different kinds of plants and seeing how they're going to work in your garden, how you can cultivate them. I'm always interested in growing things from seed. Also, I like reading old gardening books because there's a lot of old technique. I mean, forest gardening has been going for centuries. It's one of the oldest forms of gardening, in fact, as is forest farming. So there's nothing new here, and there's lots of valuable information that people have put in over the centuries as to how they created their own gardens. And also, you can look at the pictures. You get some great ideas just looking how people set gardens out. This garden in particular, which belonged to Vita Sackville West, which is Sissinghurst, I've never been there. I'd love to go. But it was this picture in the book that inspired me to start planting and then taking cuttings from Kifsgate to create this sort of white garden. And it wasn't just to have a particularly white garden. I just like the absolute volume of the flowers. They're incredible. I think it's very important when you're planning a garden to know exactly what you can grow and how you can grow it. There are some wonderful, and I do hope they are true, stories about how the Victorians actually created hermitages at the bottom of their wild gardens and employed people to live in them as hermits. I think that would be a great job. So wilderness gardens have been going forever, and you can read about them and visit them and learn so much from what other people have done and get your own ideas from them.